strategies. And then the final piece, and this is a little bit kind of our point, the one thing that I think makes this a little bit different, we are increasingly convinced that OER development and creation is something that needs to happen in a collaborative environment where learning professionals who are trained on the technical and pedagogical fronts can also work with subject matter experts to create effective resources. Okay, so spent way too much time on that slide. Based on what I saw in terms of session descriptions, I am pretty sure most of you are familiar with Lambert's social justice framework from her 2018 article. I'm going to give it a kind of a quick hit here, and then we're going to be thinking about, we're going to ask the audience to talk about kind of characteristics of a social justice framework, which the keynote already thought to do. But if you want to give us kind of a descriptor or ways that you think about it or where you've seen examples of it, we're going to be asking you for that in just a second. So Lambert talks about the 3 R's: redistributive justice. Can everybody get to what they need? Recognitive justice, which is, are we seeing diverse perspectives, ways of knowing, and things outside of the dominant narrative? And finally, representational justice. Are we collaboratively co-creators of knowledge, including our students? Are people able to contribute to knowledge creation and create a more democratized knowledge base as we go forward, as is characteristic of open? And I didn't say that nearly as eloquently as our keynotes, but yeah, very much what we've been talking about already. So now it's your turn. We're going to hand this over to our 2 moderators. We want you to just kind of call out and to make sure that the online audience and the in-person are able to participate with each other. We want to make sure you're on the mic when this happens. We want you to share kind of some key terms or mindsets or practices that you've seen that really show an incorporation of social justice framework in OER. Co-creation.
Maybe can somebody read what's in the chat so we can see it?
Absolutely. Our online moderator will, yes. You know what? I'll grab you the other mic.
You're in the room and you're online, but we can also give everyone a shot at the word. I can to the online audience, compare them to every one of you. Encourage spontaneity.
You could also throw the mic, but I think we get in trouble.
Yeah, so what are some ways that you see social justice represented in open?
Belonging,
Belonging,
choice,
choice, agency. Maybe, yeah, let's see.
And then online, there is co-creation, student-centered driven, student-centered OER creation, diverse voices, diverse images, diverse viewpoints, collaborative across disciplines and institutions, accessibility and inclusion, use of open source tools for creation of OERs, cross-disciplinary, customized learning materials.
Awesome. All right, this gets us excited.
Yeah, so awesome responses. So we want to talk a little bit about ways that we've tried to incorporate social justice into the work that we're doing. So if you want to scan this QR code, it will take you to a press book that we developed. We developed a course called the Introduction to Special Education. And this course is not just content, it's also ancillary materials, including activities and assessments that are aligned to national standards within the field. So you can scan that and take a peek at what we've developed. But we started doing this work due to a grant that we received in 2021. And what we're doing for this work is we're developing 6 core teacher education courses, 4 teacher education programs that will be piloted within Minnesota State. And the goal is that they can be used nationally or internationally or however teachers see fit. But they're intentionally designed to be adaptable for different contexts. Like I mentioned, they're aligned to national standards. We've selected InTest, which seem to be represented across the United States within teacher education programs. And we've designed these OER using a collaborative team. And we actually plan to use a lot of this model for a future project that we're taking on as well. But our collaborative team is comprised of 7 faculty from various institutions across the state, like I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. We also have an instructional design support team. So Melissa and I are part of that. We also have an instructional technologist, and we have an OER librarian, Etta. Do you want to wave, Etta? Yes. Part of this process is also engaging external reviewers and consultants. So we have multiple reviewers for each book, and we also have an assigned subject matter experts to provide guidance for the creation, the development, and the revision of the OER we're developing. And one of our subject matter experts is actually in attendance at this conference too, which is very exciting. But then lastly, we have an advisory group that helps to provide guidance regarding the content, the issues, anything that we need additional guidance for, we can take to this advisory group and get guidance on how to approach open education in a way that is equitable and adheres to the social justice framework.
So as Fran mentioned, this is not just a textbook, and this is the vision that as we're starting to understand the world of open, we're starting to believe that this is where open can and should head if we really want to incorporate a social justice framework. So what we're doing is we're creating a full course. Yes, there's textbook content, and yes, you've probably done a lot of this if you've worked in, Pressbooks or, LibreText or any other kind of platform where you do have interactives that are embedded throughout. But we're also ensuring that we build fully fleshed out activities that can be used in person or online, synchronous or asynchronous, with a full set of instructions that instructors can choose to use. We have a full set of rubrics that are fully aligned back to InTask. We provide one example where we use the Minnesota state standards, and we have crosswalked them to InTask so that we know that in our state, if you have certain standards you have to cover, it will be very easy to find us in Pressbooks. And I'll give you a really quick, the metaphor I use a lot, sorry for those of you who've heard this 20 times. Imagine that you walk up to an all-you-can-eat buffet and you're like, well, great, I'm vegetarian. What can I eat here? This would be equivalent to being able to push a button and suddenly everything that is not vegetarian goes away. Now, this doesn't mean you're going to eat everything on the buffet, right? Unless, you're really hungry. But what we have provided is a filterable way to input a particular standard and be able to see, and actually, I think I'll show you a little bit of this here, be able to see for that particular standard, you may have 4 activities, 2 assessments, 3 videos, 2 interactives, and a module that covers that. And you can make a choice to build your course Lego style in a way that allows for highly personalizable course design that's specific to you in the way you teach, your institution, your students, and your moment in your class. So this is something we're excited about being able to offer as a new way of thinking about this. But we have these 6 priorities, right? Fully aligned granularly so that every single element, you know exactly what standard is being covered. And fun fact, we have discovered that almost all states, to some degree, cover InTask either verbatim or it's highly parallel. So chances are you can crosswalk your state standards. That it's modular, as I described, fully accessible, and we're having student testers who use assistive technologies work their way through the books. We're practicing culturally inclusive pedagogies. We're employing learning science standards for maximum learning retention in terms of structure, style, and how we design the course. And we're ensuring that every opportunity, not just that it's personalized for the faculty, but it's also personalized for the students in terms of what their choices are. So how does this relate back to the notion of a social justice framework? And now I am going to fly because I want to make sure we get all the way through here. Don't worry, you got about 3 more. So in terms of redistributive, we want, one of the biggest things, as you're probably well aware, that we hear from faculty who are hesitating to adopt OER is they don't even know where to start. And we also know that because of the way OER has historically been put into place, where it's, hey, individual faculty member, here's some money, go make a book, put it out online. Good luck. It'll probably never get revised or updated, but hey, it's out there on Merlot or OpenStax or whatever else. What happens is people who are new to OER are sifting through all the obsolete things, the inapplicable things, and looking for the diamonds. So what we're hoping to do is if we start to think about this as individual modular pieces, we're going to make it that are filterable and searchable. We're hoping to make it increasingly easy for newcomers to open to be able to incorporate these pieces in a way that are specifically laser focused on what they need. So that's, we do this, and we also have restricted what file types we're using. We're not going with fancy, we're going with usable. So everything is set up to be as cut and paste as possible, minimal tech needs in order to utilize. In terms of recognitive, we have pushed, and this might be a point of discussion to be worth having. We've struggled a little bit in working with our faculty on this. We are insistent on the fact that we need to incorporate pedagogies that are equitable into our practices. We use critical race theory as our foundational mindset as we approach these things. We also, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but well, I'll get to that in a sec, sorry. But we also ensure that we have call-out boxes that offer multiple mindsets. We of course don't want to kitchen sink our students, so we have a lot of deeper dives where we say, here's an issue, something worth a critical perspective issue. Here's a place where you can go out and learn more about this. And we've also built those kinds of opportunities into our activities and into our assessments. But we want to ensure that everyone has full access and that we're really thinking about not just who's coming to the table as a student, but also whose voices are being heard within our material. Now we're getting to the part I wanted to mention. So representational in terms of co-creating knowledge. Here's where we've struggled a little bit because, you know, I'm throwing out a couple of frameworks here, right? We talk about open educational practices model. We have essentially said no disposable assessments. We don't have quizzes. We don't have tests. We don't have presentations. We don't have papers. That's not what we do, and they're easy to find. So if someone really wants or needs them, they can do it. We do have interactives where students can self-test, which, as we know, is one of the most effective ways to improve knowledge retention, but they're not presented or designed to be gradable, right? This is about how people guide their own learning paths. We also heavily focus on ways to, with the modes of interaction model that you see modeled here, look for ways to decrease the transactional distance between a student and other students, their teacher, and the content. So everything is multi-directional. This is not pour information into someone's head. This is how do we create knowledge together? We, at every step of the way, offer student choice in terms of how they get engaged, how the material is represented, and their opportunities for expression. So every assignment that is offered, we've built in instructions to make it easier for whoever the educator is to actually give the students a choice for how they submit it without the headache of how do I write that so that it doesn't become a nightmare for me. So we set up really clear, we use the TILT framework, transparency in learning and teaching. And so every single one of these follows the same pattern, and we ensure that everything is clear and the teachers don't have to build this from scratch. We already have it there for them. Yeah, so for that reason, our ancillaries are every bit as important as the text. Text is great. Thank you so much for those of you who created wonderful OER that we can use and bring in for our text. What we're building is an entire course and learning experience around that. Okay, now, yes, your turn. We want to hear about some of the challenges that you may have encountered. I mentioned that we had struggled a bit with our faculty to get their heads wrapped around what we are asking for as we develop subject-specific materials. We got a lot of submissions for like presentations and rubric things like don't chew gum during the presentation. And so we are working on moving our faculty into that space. So that's a challenge that we're looking at. So what kinds of challenges are you all experiencing as you're trying to develop OER that incorporate a social justice framework? I bet one of them is money. Oh, yeah.
I would say, welcome to just repeat it, building these into promotion.
So building this into promotion and tenure.
Making it worth faculty's time. to do
When we
this.
can't offer money.
What else?
So online, there is a cultural context that is not supportive with focus on inclusive access at my institution. And then another one is the technical demands and training required for creating accessible materials. We're putting in a lot of work and it takes a lot of time.
Any other thoughts?
Someone just put time in all caps.
Yes,
Right.
I would see time showing up. I would probably guess that having the human resources available to carry forward the work is probably another challenge that many of you experience.
I'll briefly say this and then pass on. The other thing that comes up over and over in every space, open space and in our spaces as well is what happens to this in 3 years? What happens to this in 5 years? We just went through incredible paradigm shifts in our world. And this is gonna happen again and we all know it, right? So how do we ensure that what's out there stays current so that it doesn't just continue to be, space junk littering the, internet instead of useful OER? So for me, that's something that's in my head a lot.
Not to mention, that's also something that sometimes prevents faculty from wanting to engage in the work, because they see it as being a lost cause. They think they're gonna put forward the time and effort to create the OER now and have it just become obsolete within a matter of years. So they choose not to participate, which is really unfortunate.
So just some other comments coming in from online. One says that not all colleagues consider this important. Another one says reviewing for equity, identifying who should or can review content for this. Third one says how to ethically use AI to solve some of these issues, especially the time needed for certain tasks when compiling OERs. And then another one, our teachers assume OER will promote ideas they don't agree with. I don't know how to tell them that textbooks they use have POVs too.
That's awesome.
And I guess from me, I would say time, but also inversely, what can I drop to
Yeah.
create that time?
Yeah. So our point here is that it's really challenging for one person to do all of this work. If we think about how OER have historically been created, as per Melissa shared, here's some money, faculty developed this OER. That's really challenging because, as you all know, faculty have full-time jobs. They have full-time work. They're oftentimes being pulled in a million different directions. They have committee work, etc. And while this could be like a really cool sabbatical project, that is not enough, unfortunately. So if we think about the things that Melissa and I are talking about as it relates to developing OER using a social justice framework, it requires a collaborative approach. Together as a team, we're able to have a lot more resources than we do individually. So if we think about things like accessibility, not everyone might have that background knowledge. So it's really important that we tap people who do, so they can bring that strength to the team. I'm thinking about project management, copyright or publishing. I'm thinking about OER tools. While faculty are wonderful subject matter experts, they might not have all of these skill sets needed. Not to mention, as I said, full-time work, several students, several different directions, several different hats that they have to wear within their roles. They might not be able to do all of this. It's a tall order to ask one person to do this. But as a team, we're able to do it effectively because we can bring the right people to the table to develop this work in a thoughtful manner.
And I don't know about you, Fran, but did you get any how to use technologies classes in your grad program? Because I didn't. And also, I know this is getting better, but I got no pedagogy really in my grad program either.
Mhm. Yeah, and a lot of people who have, master's or doctorate degrees, they might not have that training either. So it's important that we bring people to the table who do have those backgrounds and experiences, so we can leverage our resources to develop high quality OER that adheres to a social justice framework so that everyone is able to learn effectively. So when we think about, now we're going to talk about the 3 R's as it relates to problems and solutions that we see within this framework. I'm just going to do like a high level overview of the next 3 slides, but please feel free to read along. So some factors that we see affecting redistributive justice include accessibility, sustainability, usability, applicability, and shareability. So some solutions that we have for overcoming these factors and having them adhere to redistributive justice include distributing expertise. I'm comfortable saying I don't know everything and I can't do everything better than everyone else. So it's important that I bring people to the table who can help to shine their experience on the development of OER so that we can create high quality OER as a team. Also thinking about review and remediation. It's important that we have people who have that accessibility background doing these things so that we are adhering to accessibility standards so all of our students can learn. Thinking about revision cycles. Oftentimes individuals might not have the time or the resources to go back to the OER that they develop to ensure that it's current, relevant, that it's culturally responsive, et cetera. So thinking about ways that we can leverage ticketing systems so that that they can be sustained and that they can be relevant in the future as well. Thinking about current platforms, in our work, it's important for us to use Pressbooks because that's what a lot of our partners use and that's what they're comfortable using and that's what they're familiar using. So making sure that we're all using similar platforms that are not only prevalent across the board, but also thinking about how they're usable, right? If we select some obscure platform that people don't really know how to use, they're probably going to be even more apprehensive to use the OER that we're developing.
And I'm totally
Yeah.
joining because I realize it's a conversation about what platform, where, and how do we do it, right? But that's part of thinking about this in terms of full access.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, thinking about incorporating multiple perspectives so that there's more than one perspective present so that it has a wider application. No,
I'm sorry.
no, you're totally fine. And then lastly, thinking about ownership, thinking about who owns this OER. Oftentimes we tie work to people and then the people leave and then it's done. So it's really important that we think about how to really identify ownership so that we can do those revision cycles and so that we can have repositories and maintenance as well. So thinking about recognitive justice, some factors that we see in this realm include creation, currency, dedication, and perception. So like I mentioned before, in the creation, if we have multiple people's perspectives present, it's going to be a more relevant text inherently. Thinking about how we can bring in different subject matter expertise, not only for the sake of bringing in that subject matter expertise, but so that we have educational contexts rather than just one singular educational context. And I'm talking about if you think about where you went to college, when you went to college, what you learned during that time, it is rooted in a context that informs your educational perspective. So if you have a team, then you have several different educational contexts that can be leveraged to consider multiple perspectives and create relevant OER. Thinking about dedication as it relates to creation resource abundance. So as a team, we have so many more resources than we do as individuals. So thinking about, I mentioned human resources, right? Having the bodies and the people to be able to do the work. Thinking about having the time, access to technologies, the ability to do revisions. Having a group allows for this to be a lighter lift. And then lastly, perception, thinking about implicit biases. If we have a team of folks, oftentimes those implicit biases are checked. Someone's like, hey, guess what? Like, I don't feel comfortable with that, or that's not right. And they can be called out and fixed. And then lastly, representational justice. Some factors that inform this include pedagogy, content, assessments, and connection to materials. So our solutions for realizing representational justice in our OER using a social justice framework include using open student-centered pedagogy that allows students to get engaged with the OER. Developing multimodal content, so it's not just text, because students don't necessarily learn when they're just reading about something. There needs to be some sort of application. Also, co-creating this knowledge, co-creating this content, co-creating this experience with students is vital. You all know that when you do a project and you share out what you're doing, you probably know it a lot better than if you sit in presentation, right? So if we have students co-create, they're going to be able to recall the information and apply it in future contexts. Thinking about developing renewable, open assessments that are adaptable to different contexts. So Melissa talked a little bit about the assessments that we're developing. We're really hoping that, not hoping, we've designed them intentionally so that they can be realized in different educational contexts. Faculty can pick and choose what they use. They can change the assignments and assessments to match the context that they're teaching as well. For instance, if you're teaching in Florida, you might be able to omit some of the dirty words that you're not able to say in your state, but it'll still have the same essence, the same meaning, the same takeaway. And then lastly, allowing students to feel a connection to the materials beyond just student to material. So here's a visual of how we've tried to approach this work to really undergird that social justice framework. So if you look at this circle on the middle of the screen, everyone is an equal partner in this work. We have faculty, we have project staff, we have additional support, and we have external review. So it really is essential to think about this as a shared partnership rather than having one person leading the work and other people following. We really work to have a collaborative, shared experience so that we can develop OER that adheres to a social justice framework. All right, so it's your turn. Any questions, comments, or insights that you have about how a collaborative team approach can support social justice?
And I'll just say, it was really inspiring. I knew about some of the projects that the keynote brought up, but not all of them, and holy cow, you're doing amazing stuff. I think the big switch between what we're trying to do and what we were hearing, not across the board, and obviously I don't know all the projects, is this this notion that this is not exclusively a faculty-driven effort. That kind of, I don't think that that's fair to faculty to ask them to be to do the things that will truly incorporate and infuse social justice on their own. And so I'm curious. I love the idea of really helping train faculty and onboard them in terms of these practices. But I'm curious what all you've run into as you've done this. What are the challenges? Again, money, right? But thoughts. We'll start in the room and then switch to online.
I'll start because I was also thinking about this. One thing I think is just having a team, like whenever you're trying to make a change, having like 2 or 3 other people to like take that step forward with you is just a great way to be like, I'm not crazy, right? Like I'm doing like, this makes sense. We're doing a good thing. And I think regardless of what the specific change you're trying to make is, recruiting 2 or 3 other people to be your team will be a way to go forward on that and not to let sort of fear of criticism or just like sort of self-doubt. It gives you a little extra boost over that. I don't know if other people have found that, having like a couple of people on your team.
So my university is pretty behind on the whole OER adoption thing because of money. Recently we got a new provost who's really into it. So now finally our faculty is adopting. So this has been really helpful on the creation end of things because now they're starting to talk about creation and again, money. But like, thank you. I just want to say thank you. This has been super helpful.
Awesome. That's awesome. You want to do some online ones?
Yeah, do one more in here. And then
Go ahead.
And there was also one in the back as well.
Oh, and
So let's switch to me while she walks.
Oh, I love it.
well, Debbie, okay, so and by the way, Debbie is on our teacher education advisory group, our T, and I cannot tell you how many times she has helped us out of when we're like, now what? How do we do this? So go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, so love this approach. Absolutely love this. Mutual, like I have learned a great deal from the work that you do.
and do my best to take it back into our space and apply it. I'm gonna say that one of the big challenges to this team approach is the team approach. Because I am finding that higher education, working with faculty and librarians and instructional designers and other groups in higher education is very siloed. And so bringing that team together and breaking through, I'm gonna call it a cultural barrier, right? That siloed individual culture of higher education like that's a huge challenge for us.
I will add that in this context of Minnesota State too, we're a highly unionized environment, and sometimes our different contracts that each party holds can be in conflict. So thank you for sharing that. If we want to go to online and then
Yeah,
the
so
person
what-
in the yellow in the back.
Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're gonna swap, right? One online, one in person.
Oh, sure. Oh, good.
So online, one of the people commented, our challenges are getting that team together. Everyone is working in silos and it's been challenging bringing everyone together. And also, how do you find out who's doing what to form that team in the first place?
I had a question about, like, often this work can be vulnerable and challenging, and I was wondering if you could talk about what you've done to kind of build safety and build relationships across a new team.
I really appreciate that question. Without going into tons of detail, I'll say that when we started this project, I came in about 6 months into the project as the only instructional designer. And, boy, have I Monday morning quarterbacked what our experience was. And some of it was me, some of it was other, elements of the team. We brought Fran in about a year into the process, thank God. And as it is, it's a lot. We were struggling to get all the things done. But the number one thing that we realized is that we failed to adequately and transparently onboard our faculty and build a relationship, a trusting relationship with them. And so often we would have, we would ask for material and say, so we can't do that because this would be the so-called disposable assignment. And the reactions were not good. We have learned to do better. Our plan is to do better with the next group that we're working with. I am very, very eager. I've looked just a tiny bit at some of the work that Kim Brew, shout out again, Kim, I love you. She's online right now, has done. But we want to learn from you all and bring our faculty on as partners better instead of overwhelming them with a really different process than what they were expecting. So we're still learning that part.
And yeah, and while there may have been some snags in this process, like Melissa said, we were able to learn lessons. And we were able to take those lessons into our next project to ensure that we develop those relationships and that everyone is properly onboarded. And I think it's really important. I don't feel like higher ed talks about this enough. Know the people you work with beyond their work. When you connect with people and you go beyond just their work persona, you're able to develop those meaningful relationships and you're able to get to know your colleagues in a different way. And we talk about allowing students to bring their whole selves to the classroom. What about allowing our colleagues to bring their whole selves to work, right? That's so important.
I think we've like a minute left. Did you want to online and then we'll see if we
We have
Sure.
documented.
So there was just a comment from the online group saying, I wonder if additional support should be called infrastructure support, because additional feels like an add-on. And infrastructure places some emphasis on the societal responsibility towards support.
I love that.
If we have time for Dundee, this is great. I will just comment. I'm gonna up on the soapbox for just a second. It's time to stop treating OER development and creation as some sort of one-off. Here, have somebody go do the thing, and starting to build it into our structures and say, we have a system here. And just like I'm gonna have an admin, support team for the executive leadership team, and just like I have a finance department and I have advisors, we have instructional design, OER librarians, and other people who will partner with faculty to develop effective things. And we're not gonna forget they're out there. We're gonna continue with a revision cycle. This needs to change. And that, when I talk about a paradigm shift, that's what I'm talking about. Off my soapbox. Here you go.
Sorry.
The thing that I've learned in the last year is consult your OER librarians early and often. Beyond that, one of the things we've done in our team to develop those relationships with our team is book clubs, where we talk about social justice issues and we talk about EDI and we read books together and we discuss them and how our perspectives have changed. But we also do a patio where you just hang out for an hour once a month. And somebody leads it and it's a different person every time. And it's a way of learning your coworkers beyond, and we do it online. It's easy and it's fun.
Love it. Thank you.
Thanks, sorry to rip everybody off, we have so much good content, but I'm gonna switch over to the next folks. Thanks for joining us and please stay.
Thank you.
Thank you.